Hello there, Tony. How are you?
I'm great, Robin. How are you?
Wonderful to see you. I'm doing great.
It's great to see you.
Um, so this is our second interview because the first interview for some reason didn't record. So it's nice to see you again.
Yes.
So Tony Sekulich is a longtime friend. In fact, I've known Tony as long as I've known my husband, which is about 37 years, I think,
Yeah.
38 years.
Wow.
38 years because I met you through Jeff when we were dating.
Yep.
So through this whole time, you've taken the road less traveled in so many ways, and you've
Mhm.
done some things that other people would have liked to do, and then they went for a more conventional job because you were involved in the arts. And I
Mhm.
think your story's interesting because you've landed in a more organizational job at this point after freelancing for many years. So I think
Mhm.
you have a lot to share about career and knowing what it's like to be out on your own and knowing what it's like to work for someone else. So I'd love to hear, first of all, your story from your perspective of how your career has gone on, and then we'll break it down a bit and compare and contrast and hear what your next steps are, because I know with you, there's always new steps to come.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I career-wise, I did a arts degree and then got a bachelor of journalism degree. I always knew from like from a very young age, I didn't always know what I wanted to do, but I always knew what I didn't want to do. And I knew it was not something like business or sales or sort of corporate. And when I was in high school and then later in university, I got drawn to writing for the school papers and things like that. And that's what really got me excited. So I went, and after my BA, I pursued a degree in journalism and went out. And my first job was out in rural Alberta as a newspaper reporter. And that was great. I loved it. I was getting paid every day to write, and there was a bit of a culture shock there, though. Being, East Coast city boy going to rural Alberta, I knew nothing about agriculture or the oil industry or things like that, and that's all I wrote about. But that's why I say it was like the best starting experience. And then from there, I got into uh, public relations, and I was doing that until I was about 30. And then it was right around that time when I also was writing feature film scripts and making short films through the film co-op. And I felt this burning desire to pursue screenwriting. Like I just really wanted, I really love the idea of telling stories. And at the time, I didn't see myself as a playwright, and I never saw myself as a novelist, because I always said, like, I was born without the gene that allows you to describe a tree over 3 pages, right? Like, that wasn't what I did. But when I found screenwriting, which was like, oh, it's just, you just cut to what the viewer's seeing, what people are saying, and you're just building story through dialogue and visuals and things like that. I was like, this is really, really interesting. So I uh the sort of the thing that the break that got me into it was, I had a feature film script that was accepted to the Atlantic Film Festival script development program. There I met the guy who was the gatekeeper at the Canadian Film Center, who encouraged me to apply. He said, I think you'd be great. And so that opened that door. And at the age of 32, I moved to I quit my shirt and tie job and moved to Toronto to pursue to attend the professional screenwriting program and pursue life as a screenwriter.
Ideally, we all chase our excitement,
Hmm.
but following through on that and continuing to chase it, I think is rare.
Yeah.
I've experienced it myself, and even if we're excited to do what we're doing and after a few years we need to change, and we don't even self-evaluate that it's not so exciting anymore. And that's something that impresses me about all of your choices and the way you still talk about your career is you seem to have a standard where you're going to do something that you're meant to do. You're not going to settle for the
Right.
boring job.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, in my case, I mean, I know exactly what it was that sort of prompted me to pursue it. And if it weren't for this, I probably would not have. But it was the near death experience I had in November of '98 when I was when I had just turned 29, and I was working at that university relations job, and I wasn't feeling well at all, and went to the hospital in Fredericton, and they checked me out, and they said, "Oh yeah, your blood pressure is really really high. You should see your doctor on Monday." Well, this was a Friday afternoon, and I was freaked out about the thought of me walking around with like really high blood pressure. So they they were just about to let me go, and I said, "Oh well, do you have something that you can give me for now just to kind of tide me over?" And they gave me a pill, and whatever it was, my body did not care for it at all, because I was still hooked up to all of the machines with all the wires and stuff like that, and they started to go off like I had just hit the jackpot in Vegas. Like, and all of a sudden I hear code blue to whatever, and it was like a scene out of VR. The doctors and nurses came uh, rushing in, and I was there, and they were desperately trying to. My heart was beating like over 200 beats per minute, well, way out of rhythm. It was, yeah, it was something, and so they finally got it under control. But I knew that things weren't great because they had a nurse like watch over me, like stand over me, and basically be there in case something happened again. And so from I always said like from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. that day, I spent 3 hours basically just trying not to die. And the only thing, like what really struck me at that time is, like we can say that we think about our life and we ponder it and we look at all of it from different angles. But I would say like until you reach that point where you're really uncertain if you're going to see one more day, that's when the clarity comes. And for me it was, I was working at this job, and I was wearing a suit and tie every day, and I was going into an office with my name on the door, and by any sort of objective account I had reached a certain level of professional success. And I realized that it didn't matter to me. Like it didn't mean anything to me. Like I thought, if this is it, if it ends here, all I'll think is what a waste. Like that I had never, I never really gone after that thing that I was really passionate about. And so that happened in November '98, and by the summer of '99, I was out, just because I knew that I couldn't. I felt like a fraud going in there every day, and that's what that's what really sort of propelled me to go after it.
Well, when I think of those dates, I remember the story about blood pressure and heart
Mhm,
rate, but I
mhm,
couldn't recall the details.
yeah.
But it was November '98, and I was having a baby, my second baby in December. So that's probably part of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I definitely didn't know that that changed your outlook on life. And maybe
Oh,
maybe it was more looking back that you realize how much.
yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. And maybe not necessarily in a healthy way. Like like everyone says, oh, like that gave me clarity, and like that's what I was supposed to do. And it's like, yeah, but I mean, they tell people who like go through trauma like not to make any major life decisions for like a year because of all these things. And I'm probably a poster boy for why. Like I did that. I was like, oh, I'm going to change my whole life, and uh things like that. But like I totally get it. Like you go through something like that, and you feel like, yeah, your whole sort of perspective on what is important and like what matters changes entirely.
So, where did that lead you?
Uh,
what was your next step? That was
yeah, well, then, yeah, so that's when I really decided to pursue screenwriting and and it's funny because when I look back now, I realize like it's really amazing that I ended up anywhere because I didn't have a plan. Like, you know, I didn't like I knew what I wanted to do, and I felt like I had to do it. I just didn't really have a good idea of how, you know,
Mhm.
and so I mean the way that I did it was completely moronic, you know, like I mean, because I just basically like quit my job and said, okay, I'm a screenwriter now. Except I didn't, you know, like I didn't really, you know, think about what was happening. I knew that you know, people had said, "Oh, we have this kind of work if you want to do it," and that, and I was like, "No, no, no," because if I do that, then I'm not a screenwriter. I have to be a screenwriter, and it just basically like you know, it was the right thing to do, but I went about it completely the wrong way for sure. But like I said, like I eventually I ended up you know that process did lead me to writing the feature script that I was really passionate about, and that got me into the Atlantic Film Festival program, and that got me into the Canadian Film Center, and that kicked off my career. So I kind of, I guess you could say, I mean, I eventually found my way. I stumbled into it, but I mean, like looking back, I really should have had a better plan for how to go about it because it would have saved me a lot of heartache along the way.
Well, when you do look back, what were the keys for you to leading you to success and opportunity?
Well, I mean, you know, the biggest thing was just to basically trust my instincts. You know that I felt like I had a story that I wanted to tell, and I felt like if I could, you know, I could take this somewhere, and it did. Like I said, it got me in there, in the Atlantic Film Festival program, and then the CFC, and so I learned to you know trust my creative instincts and follow them, and yeah, that's I mean that was probably the biggest one.
Was there ever a point when you felt like you had it and you've tried this, it's not working, I'm
Oh,
leaving this? Were there days like that for you?
oh, almost every day. You know, like like the and really that the biggest mindset shift I wish that I had was that I kept thinking, okay, I haven't made it, I haven't made it, I haven't made it, but like one of these days I'm going to break through and I'm going to make it and everything is going to be, you know, great. And then I remember, you know, I got my first professional job as a screenwriter. I was hired to adapt a Stevie Cameron best-selling nonfiction book into a feature script. Uh, but I mean that went into development and never got made. So like I never, you know, had the feeling of like, oh, I made it. Although I mean, I still remember that day was amazing. You know, like you know when I signed my first professional contract, like you know, I felt like now I am a professional screenwriter, but you're still waiting for that feeling of like when do I have that kind of breakthrough feeling? And then shortly after that, I was hired to write for a CTV comedy, and now I was a network television writer. And I'm like, I keep waiting for that you know feeling of I've made it, and it's easy street, and everything's just going to be coasting here. But I kept looking for that sort of that when do I just step through the the light and everything is just a breeze. But what I discovered is that you're actually always just grinding for that next gig, that hey, I've made it, I have no more worries, just just like never, it doesn't really exist. When you have a job, you know, you do it, and it's great, and it's amazing, and it's like the most fulfilling, rewarding work that you could do. But eventually, it's, you know, it's going to come to an end. The show's going to get canceled. They're not going to bring you back for season two, or, you know, the movie's done, and then you're back to square one, you know, looking for that next job and that next gig. So there were all kinds of days where I just felt like, you know, I don't know, like I don't know if you know, like yeah, you know, like what's going to happen, or should I stay with this? I mean, that kind of doubt stays with you quite a bit.
Hmm. So it sounds to me like the world of entrepreneurs, the world of artists, the world of actors. Then you've got to outdo yourself each time. That's what I'm imagining.